ሰላም ጤና ይስጥልን ውድ የኢትዮጲክ ቤተሰቦች እንደምን ዋላችሁ። ዛሬ ዕለቱ ሐሙስ ሜይ 21 ነው። ከሰሞኑ ስናስተዋውቀው እንደነበረው እንግዲህ የዲሲ ከንቲባነት እየተወዳደሩ ያሉ እጩ ተወዳዳሪዎችን ጥያቄዎች ይዘን መተን የምንጠይቅበት ፕሮግራማችንን እንጀምራለን። ለዛሬ ከኛ ጋር አብረውን ያሉት ዶክተር ሮንዳ ሀሚልተን ይባላሉ። ልክ እንደ ሌሎቹ ሁሉ እሳቸውም ለዲሲ ከንቲባነት እጩ ሆኖ እየተወዳደሩ ይገኛሉ። ይህ እንግዲህ ማህበረሰባችን በሚኖርበት አካባቢ ላይ ያሉትን መረጃዎች በአግባቡ እንዲያገኝ እና ከነዚህ መረጃዎች በመነሳትም ወደ ምርጫ ቦታዎች ሲሄድ ሙሉ መረጃ ይዞ እንዲሄድ ለማስቻል የታለመ ፕሮግራም ነው። እንድትከታተሉ እንጋብዛለሁ። ወደ ፕሮግራማችን እንሄዳለን። Thank you so much, Dr. Rhonda Hamilton. Everything that I said is welcoming our viewers and thanking them to staying with us, and thanking you too for accepting our invitation to reach out to our community and share your ideas and what you stand for as you are running for the DC mayoral candidates. That being said, I would like to invite you to introduce yourself and tell us why you are running for DC mayoral race this time and what's different from the last time that you ran.
Well, I thank you very much, first and foremost, both to the Ethiopic platform as well as to your viewership and listeners. I'm excited to run as DC's next mayor. I am Dr. Rhonda Hamilton, as you mentioned, and I am running because as a mental health advocate for the better part of the last 10 years, and also someone who's properly and very excitedly managed the affairs of people, finances, and resources, we realize that our district government and our city as a whole is struggling to be able to overcome a lot of the challenges that have many struggling, whether it's in their housing, economics, or their schooling understandings. I'm running because our city is currently in threat of being taken over by our president as well as our federal government threats. And so we need strong leadership. We need leadership that will reunite the people and that will help to reduce and minimize the challenges that so many families across our 8 wards are facing. I am also, I would say what's different from the last time I ran in 22 till present day is that the last time I came forward at the second half of the race, recognizing many of the same challenges, but not allowing enough time to really get out on the ground, meet the people, understand across all of our diverse populations as well as our native Washingtonians, the understanding of what they want to see in their government and the fact that they didn't feel protected. So we've had time to really immerse ourselves in what we call DC culture, accept and embrace the fact that we have so much diversity and the reality that together we're going to come at the ballot boxes in November is my hope, so that we can exercise the power as citizens. We tend to feel that public government in the nation's capital has started not to feel so public, feels a little more corporate infused, feels like the special interest in developers, issues and agendas have exceeded that of the everyday citizen in Washington, D.C. And so I came forward to restore power of the citizen voices and the citizen vote. And thank you again for having me.
Sure thing. Thank you for coming as well. I just want to emphasize that all these questions, at least 80%, around 80% of these questions are collected from our readers. So by answering these questions, you're answering to the community. So my second question is, if elected, what are the top 3 changes residents would realistically expect from you within a year?
I would imagine that the number one on most of our list should be the housing challenges, whether you are someone who is challenged with your housing circumstances or you're dealing with the impact of the effects of the failures of our ability to properly house our citizens. Housing is number one on my list. And as a mental health advocate, housing is healthcare. If we can't stabilize our citizens, then we see the fallout and the failures in the public safety arenas and some of the other aspects that we're dealing with as a city. So housing accessibility, making sure that we are looking at our vacant real estate, looking at the existing failures of our budget to properly be managed in order that folks are not waiting on a waiting list as they are for 2 years for something affordable, making sure that we're capping rents, making sure that we're holding our landlord to the standards that should be in terms of the living and the understanding of the dignity that many people feel that they're sacrificing to not live with mold, not live with an overrun of rodent populations, to make sure that they can afford to be here and not be pushed out of the city. So all things housing are relative and definitely a priority for me. Secondly, we're looking at the threats to the district government as it relates to our ability to govern ourselves. The fact that we see so much over policing and overdevelopment, and we still have so many citizens' needs that are not being met. And so we must stabilize the economics in our town in order that the gentrification and threats to our home rule do not push more out of the city. And then thirdly, what I'd like to see is that we are able to audit our government in order that we can restore integrity to government as a whole. And so we've got to strengthen our laws for our whistleblowers. We've got to make sure that we are recouping and reallocating money so that we're strengthening our small business economies. And so the economics, the housing, as well as the threats to our home rule are going to be what's on my high priority list.
Great. My next question has to do with the language barrier that our community faces every now and then, and how the city communicates when there are urgent needs like disaster alerts through Alert DC. If there is a tornado warning, for instance, there is no way for the community to learn about it if they are not averse in English language. So do you have any plans to be inclusive, at least when it comes to important languages that are not covered by the current administration?
Absolutely. And I'll be very honest with you. Thank you for that question. God forbid we have a tornado or some other weather emergency that we are challenged to communicate with our citizens. But I believe because we are so diverse, we're missing the everyday opportunities to communicate better with our citizens, whether it's on the schooling level to help our young people immerse themselves in other cultures so that they're able to pick up and grasp other languages. There are also understandings that our everyday citizens from our diverse communities are not able to access the resources necessary because of the language barriers. But absolutely, in situations where there are emergencies, we should be able to address the language barriers, I would say, through a robust understanding of public service announcements, which we don't seem to utilize as much. We're on TV, we're looking at the telephones daily, we're on social media, but we're not getting those consistent messages to reach out to our diverse populations as well as our citizenry. And one of the things that our campaign has already begun working on is implementing what I call my advisory commission on international affairs, because as a district, we have not truly capitalized on the growth of our diverse communities and how we can better benefit together through our communications, resources, and governing.
Great. I have one question way in the back, but now that you mentioned creating an advisory committee to utilize the international community in the district, the current mayor had sent a delegate to Ethiopia a while back with the current prime minister, which is now we know that it's an authoritarian government, abuse of power, lack of freedom of the press, and lack of rule of law, and massive internal displacement, and journalists being arrested just for, writing stories and things like that. So, what role do you think the mayor's office should play when it comes to making relationships with outside governments? And do you think you will continue this kind of relationship with authoritarian governments?
Well, no, absolutely. Let me say this first and foremost. Although I am a politician, I am a mental health advocate, and I take that work very seriously. And so it's important that we don't endorse unhealthy behaviors, whether it's in our politics or in our everyday society. The truth of the matter is, DC being the nation's seat of governance, we have a responsibility to make sure that we're leading from a position of strength, as well as a proper example. As we ourselves are facing threats to our current independence, so are many other nations and jurisdictions around the globe. And so it's important that we're aligning ourselves with folks who understand the threats to independence, and that we understand that we are going to prevail in the fact that we're not going to concede to authoritarian powers. And we have the opportunity here in the nation's capital to absolutely be the example. And under my leadership, that is exactly what I'm going to focus on, making sure that the threats to democracy, not just here in DC, around the nation and the globe, are addressed and addressed appropriately, so that the people's voices will reign. So no, I will not be a mayor that will align our district with authoritarian figures as we continue to fight and push through those that are here in our local land.
Thank you for that answer. My next question has to do, this is even after we send out the survey, people were reaching out to us to ask this specific question. How are you going to solve the affordability crisis? Like you mentioned it earlier with the housing in every other industry, but like what's your plan for that?
Thank you for that question as well. Absolutely, we have to address our affordability crisis. You know, my team, as I mentioned to you, I have advisory commissions that have been set up for various areas of where we're failing as a city. We're looking at the housing challenges and understanding that we must be intentional in our efforts to support policies that will get our people out of the street and capping the rents, making sure that when we are assessing median incomes, for example, which are typically used to understand resource allocation. We currently, for example, in DC, we know that east of the river, in Ward 8 especially, we have over 100,000 families still living at or below the poverty level. And so it's important that when we allocate monies and grants to address these issues, that the median income is more appropriate. Right now, we're watching where DC's median income is combined with our outer counties, such as in McLean, Virginia, also over in Montgomery County. Those are higher incomes, and so it drives up the numbers. And what we've got to do is show a truer picture of what the DC median income is, so that we can make sure that the programs and resources that are being allocated are going to properly reach the people who need them. Also, what we're seeing in terms of affordability is the cost of utilities, the predatory nature in which we're watching our ability to keep our lights on or our gas going so that we can cook and provide elements, in our everyday living. We're watching these relationships that are forming with government officials that are making it okay that costs are being driven up. And so we feel like the DC citizens are being bullied out of their money. So I believe as a government, what we have to do is we have to have more enforcement from our legislative branch. We have to make sure that there is a robust regulatory understanding that caps these costs, that helps these businesses to understand that our citizens' affordability is priority. And so we're going to have to champion policies that are going to support making sure that the least among us are able to be stabilized, and that we slow the gentrification down. We love the fact that we have schools that are going to have more curriculums, more advanced understandings, and that housing equities and values are going to raise, but we don't want that to happen at the detriment of our citizens. And so I intend to champion policies that are going to be with the citizens' affordability in mind. We have to cap the rates for our utilities. We have to make certain that housing is affordable and stable. We have to make sure that our employees can afford to live here. And we do that by being a responsible government and understanding where our dollars and cents are being spent.
Great, thank you. My next question has to do with small businesses, specifically those businesses that wish to work with the DC government as contractors. But in order to be certified through that process, businesses need to have a brick and mortar in Washington, D.C. In this day and age, do you think that's still a valid requirement for businesses to have, say, brick and mortar existence?
I think, to be honest with you, it's going to come down to the nature of business that's being offered. The truth of the matter is we have to have a transparent system in place that makes sure that the partners that we're doing business with are actually providing the service. And I
Let's
believe that,
let's say, like, for businesses that do not require to be in a physical space, like online services or virtual services or like software assisted service and things like that.
yeah, I believe that, again, the nature of the business is going to determine whether or not a brick and mortar is necessary. I'm more concerned that the outcomes of the business, the services that are being provided, are absolutely reaching our citizens and providing a true service. I believe that in since the pandemic, we've seen an uptick in a lot of deception when it comes to online businesses and when it comes to allocating monies from programs that are meant to be in place to help raise the standard of living for our citizens. So I would say case by case, we want to understand the nature of the business. Should it be a requirement on set? Not necessarily, if the service being provided is able to transparently be able to prove that they are doing just as they say they are and that our citizens are benefiting from it. We've been getting a lot of pushback in our small business arena from folks who are choosing to take their business practices elsewhere because we have not learned to streamline our process to let more businesses in. And so while we follow a pathway of exciting and inviting more in, we have to make sure that we're transparent and that we're enforcing our laws, our standards, and our expectations for the benefit of our citizens.
All right. On the recent rental assistance program, the portal was open for an hour or two, and it was shut down right away. And they made it in person, so people were lined up for blocks and blocks around the building that was accepting applications. So, if elected, what's your plan for emergency rental assistance program, and how do you plan to streamline it so that it can serve the community more efficiently and also be there for the community when they need it?
I'm glad you brought that up. You know, I am one of the advocate voices that spoke out. I thought that that was very shamefully handled in the sense that we didn't have any indication for our vulnerable citizens. They're all vulnerable when they're looking for help, but I saw disabled citizens standing in that line who did not get in. I saw seniors standing in that line who weren't able to get the appointment secured. And so we obviously must do and will do a better job as we roll out these level of resources that are so crucial to people staying housed. How will I do it differently? Number one, we saw the resource for helping folks that need the emergency rental assistance. We saw that dollar amount go down. And we obviously, since the pandemic, have been struggling with trying to make sure that there's a proper balance between providing the amount of resources necessary and making sure the tenants are actually paying their rent. And we know that there are situations that come about that, you know, that are beyond our control. And we want to be a government that is responsible in that way. So first and foremost, what I want to understand is the root cause of why we have so many folks who are challenged to keep their rent paid and keep the roofs over their head. So we want to make sure that we're keeping opportunities available for folks to work, to economically be able to stay in their housing. We want to work with the landlords and the developer understandings to make sure that we're not quick to evict our citizens. So we're going to be more of a proactive government in the space of the root cause of why so many folks are economically challenged to keep their rent paid. Secondly, we want to make sure that we are properly allocating enough monies to address the issues. And I would imagine, since we've had enough seasons now where folks have been accessing the ERAP monies, that we can better project the amount of monies needed. And if we're creating policies and programs, then we will, to make sure that our vulnerable, our senior citizens, our disabled families are stable in their housing, then perhaps we can pull them out of those lines and make sure that those monies are being accessed by people who have unforeseen issues that arise. We want a DC where our families can comfortably afford to pay their rent and they're excited to do so. And we certainly want to make sure that the reasons that they're not able to pay their rent have anything to do with the violations in our housing code policies. And so we see a large part of these families fall behind when they're going back and forth trying to negotiate the presence of stable and habitable and clean and safe properties versus paying for something that you really don't believe you should have to pay for. And then you find yourself in landlord tenant court and up against the 8 ball. So we want to get into the preventative space, make sure that our landlords are operating properly. I myself have co-authored a piece of legislation called the HART Act, and it's designed to hold our slumlord behaviors accountable in the sense that we're going to tax the real estate if in fact you're continuing to be out of compliance and placing the health and well-being of our citizens in jeopardy, leaving them in lines to have to get emergency rental assistance to pay for housing that is not habitable. So we have some root cause work to do, and that is what I intend to usher in under my leadership.
Great, thank you for that thorough answer. We have one question from our reader. It has to do with health insurance from the DC Health Link. They're saying that they have been kicked out of the insurance because they have started working, but as an hourly employee, I don't have enough hours to get insurance from my employer. Is there any way that people like us can be included? I think the essence is that they don't have enough hours. They work only less than 20 hours per week, but regardless, DC Health Link kicked them out of the health insurance because they told them to get it from their employers. But in general, what's your perspective about health insurance and how do you plan to manage it?
Of course, as a mental health advocate, it's very important for me that our citizens are able to have proper health care coverage. And that is one of the places I believe that citizens have to be able to depend on their government to be able to step in and help bridge the gap. One of my advisory commissions is my advisory commission on wellness. And we are a team of doctors at the table understanding where the loopholes are. We know with the federal government and Mr. Trump's current policies that there are looming cuts to Medicaid that have already started to happen, which is pushing a lot of families out of the stableness of having coverage. You can rest assured that we're working to make sure that Medicaid is preserved. And this is one of the important reasons as to why I want to audit our books, audit our agencies, so that we can free up a lot of our capital and a lot of the monies that were improperly allocated that are causing loopholes. Absolutely, we want to get our employees, I should say, covered under the healthcare parameter, and whether that's through your employer or through some sort of a Medicaid understanding. But as a district government, our workers need to know that they're going to be able to have healthcare coverage. And this is why I've been pushing for the audits, because there a lot of our money is going into places and spaces and relationships that are just simply not benefiting our citizens. And so I take healthcare very seriously.
All right, thank you. Next question has to do with issues between communities. So some residents are concerned about racial tension, violence in the city, and some kind of discrimination between communities. That is also visible with those people in power, which is also translating to communities. So if elected, what's your plan to prevent this and find a way to heal society?
Boy, do I love that question. You know, DC's strongest assets are its citizens. I will. You ask me 10 times, and that'll be my same answer. And because that is the case, that absolutely means that as natives, obviously, folks that are generationally from DC, there is a kinship here, but also there needs to be a stronger embracing of the folks that have found their ways here, that have migrated here, and that equally feel just as strong about our lovely city. And once we realize that we're stronger together, once we're led by leadership that adopts that understanding, then we will continue to be a better city. This is why I am very much interested in having my International Commission of Advisors to look at ways that we can align ourselves with all of the various cultures in our town and to learn to embrace them. I have children that should be speaking multiple languages. I have children that live east of the river who have not traveled outside of their communities. And we know that when we travel, it changes our perspective. And if we can't physically transport them there, then we can certainly start these cultural infusions within our borders to get folks excited about the fact that we're stronger together. I am a daughter of a proud daughter of a military veteran who's no longer with us, an Army vet that afforded me the ability to live in Germany for quite some time. And I can tell you, I was a different Washingtonian when I returned home, more appreciative for where I come from, but also appreciative for all of the wonderful ethnicities that I was exposed to. And I know that I'm a stronger being in society because of it. And so we simply need leadership that will demonstrate the political will to bring our communities together, to uplift the differences between us, and to help us to understand that we are definitely stronger together. We're going to have to come together to defeat this foreign entity that occupies our White House. And so now is the time for us to come together. And I certainly am a leader who embraces that and who will support the upliftment of all of my communities.
Well, that's a nice segue to my next question, which has to do which has to do with DC's autonomy in the federal government and whatever is going on right now. And what's the plan for you? How do you maintain autonomy while also working smoothly with the federal government? Like, what do you plan? How do you plan to implement that?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I've watched my opponents answer this question as if there's some scientific formula and there's some magic wand. Let me just remove all of that and say this. I always start my answer to this question with this. What do you think it would look like with just half our 700,000 plus citizens in DC, just 350,000? What would that look like with 350,000 Washingtonians on the steps of Congress? Right? It looks like we're changing the discussion about our autonomy. It looks like we're sending a strong message to Congress and the White House that although we are taxed without representation, we are not going to go lightly. And so this will be a situation where we will have to align ourselves with, as you heard me mention, those other places and states and outside of the nation that are fighting for their independence, and help them to understand that any citizen's independence in jeopardy should affect and impact us all. And so what we're going to do is we're going to broaden the discussion. The world is watching DC, and we're going to take our narrative back by making sure we galvanize our citizens. One of the things that has concerned me through all of this is that we haven't seen an abundance of town halls to properly educate our citizens. I have so many Washingtonians that don't even understand what we're talking about when we're talking about the home rule and what's really, at its stake. And so that strengthens our opponents to continue to push and lean and take our narrative. The over-policing will go away under my administration. We put almost 500 million, if not more, in our policing. And so it's time for us to show that we can step up, manage our government, and take care of the matters at hand so that we can remove the threats. But there's no magic formula. Mr. Trump is going to be who Mr. Trump is. The Republican agenda is going to be what it is. But, as an independent leader, I will not fall prey to partisan politics. Everything that we do will be so that the outcomes of our citizens will be uplifted. And so we will become stronger on the steps of Congress, helping them to understand that the uniqueness of DC in terms of not having representation will not stop our voices from letting them know that you will not and cannot have DC.
All right. Short answer. What's your plan with taxes? Like, do you have...
We've been looking at that, and the quick answer would be we tax the wealthy, right? The truth of the matter is we have quite a few businesses that are operating in the city, quite a few developers that are developing in the city and benefiting without really paying their fair share. We've been to the table with billionaires, and we have not properly leveraged who we are, in my opinion, in order that we secure what we need. And so before I show up with a one-dimensional approach to how we're going to address taxes, what I want to do is make certain that we're taxing properly the businesses that are doing business in our town. What do I mean by that? For example, east of the river, we looked at just recently here with my advisory commission on residential affairs, we looked at and charted how many alcohol licenses are have been issued in just Ward 7 and 8, two of our, poorer wards. And we saw that we have the presence of over 100 businesses that have access to alcohol related licensing. So when you look at the poor health and you look at the housing challenges, when we look at the fact that folks aren't working, and the reality of the domino effect of drinking to drug usage and drug abuse, the reality of the sex and human trafficking that we're dealing with, there are underlying root causes that we could attack in order that we could strengthen our communities before I have to pit one side of the population against the other. So taxes is something that I really want to address from our business standard understandings, because a lot of folks are making billions and millions of dollars off of DC and its citizens, and we are not recouping the right return on investment for our citizens.
All right. How about AI? Where do you stand on AI?
It just keeps coming, right?
Yeah. Well,
AI at a time where I'm financing 2 school models and we still haven't advanced our students further. And, conflict resolution is not higher. Critical thinking is under duress. And the fact that I've watched us graduate seniors in 2024 with a 5.9% and up English language art comprehensions, and the up didn't go past 40% on a 100% scale. So you asked me, what about AI? I said, we've got to roll our sleeves up and really get to work. I have some wonderful people at the table working with me in my advisory commission for educational excellence. And the whole goal is to raise the standards across our educational curriculums to make sure we're responsibly introducing AI and other tools to our citizens from the standpoint of their growth. As a government, I see that we have to have more of a presence on these social media platforms, because tools that are meant for good necessarily doesn't end up that way. And we have a lot of our young people, as we see playing out in the media and through Ms. Piro's assessment, that they think they're going to lock up. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to find a way as a government to use AI as a positive to implement our workforce development and to also integrate our vocational education understandings. So we're going to double time making sure AI is something that we use as a positive tool.
does that include reduction in force utilizing AI?
No, I don't think
Yep.
so. I don't believe, not if we're talking policing and public safety. Absolutely not. Are we talking using it in conjunction with? Yes. But to remove? No. No, we are a city that has been challenged with public safety challenges. And I don't see that AI is going to benefit us if we're removing the personnel. No, it will use it in conjunction with.
Okay. Next question is, I'm going to advocate for myself this time. Uh, where do you stand in supporting local independent media like myself when it comes to government advertising from the city? Like, do you have any plans to allocate a portion of your budget to send advertisement to local independent media instead of mainstream media, supporting, the big guys?
Absolutely. If nothing else, what we've learned in this short time of Mr. Trump's second term, what we learned is that freedom of speech is very much under attack in a city such as DC, who's facing the threat of losing our autonomy. We must support independent media. I just mentioned we have so many citizens who are not properly educated, and part of that has to do with the propaganda that they're receiving through their Channel 5 settings at such and such time, or Channel 7, Channel 4, not to pick on anybody. But what we're learning is that we have to be intentional about getting the information to our citizens. And I will raise you one better and say to you, I absolutely want to see that transfer into our young people. I believe at a time where so many young people are challenged and trying to find their way, that we can be more helpful in gearing and guiding them into this public speaking space. of independent media so that they can learn how to truthfully use their platforms for the growth of their population in the world that they're going to inherit. So I absolutely want to see our district government do better about supporting independent media, because I've got a city to educate and keep educated so we stay motivated and not so vulnerable for these attacks when the politics change in our town.
Great, thank you. These questions came from many of our community members that are involved in service industry, specifically driving for Uber, Lyft, or cab drivers. But I am a driver too. I'm part of that community, because when I go for work, I work in Southeast DC, so I experience this a lot. The traffic cameras, the speeding tickets, the speeding what is that? The speeding enforcement cameras. The whole traffic system in DC is one separate entity that needs a map of its own. That like to understand it better. So, do you have any plans to streamline that, to make it better, especially for those in the service industry that are suffering through the unlimited number of tickets that they're getting, just for trying to provide service to the wide array of tourists that we have in DC that require those services?
Yeah, you asked a question a few moments back about the affordability issue, and absolutely, how do we talk about addressing affordability without looking at our speed camera enforcement mechanisms? I think that as a district, obviously, we want to keep our citizens safe, and there are some intersections that would justify or warrant why we would have cameras there. But I think that we've been guilty, and I can say that comfortably, we've been guilty of using one-size-fit-all models to address concerns that we have. I would better believe that we could do away with some of the traffic cameras in order that we could handle the concerns we have for safety, but also stop the predatory behavior. It feels like now, with all of the traffic tickets, we are in a time where we're watching many families have to do 2 and 3 jobs on the side just to make the rent. And the reality of being able to drive and to moonlight, as you will, in our tourism industry, in order that you could put food on the table for your families, should not be hindered by your concerns for so many of the traffic cameras up. I understand that some of them are necessary because of the safety issues in some of the areas of our city where research has supported that we have an amount of traffic catastrophes that we could preserve life and do better to have the cameras there. But absolutely, we're going to have to streamline these cameras and take a look at what the income was supporting from them, in order that we don't lose that resource, but find a better way to do the same thing. We don't need so many cameras, and it certainly has proven to feel predatory for far too many of our working class families and our low income families. Yeah.
Thank you. Before we part, do you have any favorite Ethiopian restaurant?
Do I have a favorite Ethiopian restaurant?
Ethiopian, Eritrean, yeah.
I don't know that I have a favorite restaurant, but I can tell you I'm someone who loves to eat. I'm a foodie, and I love the Ethiopian spices. I have a dear friend who introduced me to a dish with fufu, and I've been in love with it ever since, the spicy fish dish. And so, and that's another wonderful thing about DC being so wonderfully diverse. If we just allow ourselves to open up, we could truly find ourselves really elevating our palate, so to speak, because we all get used. We see these carryouts, and we see the liquor store settings, and we see the traditional makeups in our Easter River communities, and it kind of has us operating in a silo. And what I want to do is I want to rip the Band-Aid off and just have us be a city that can culturally appreciate and respect one another. But me as a foodie, I think the best way to, as they say, to anyone's heart is through their stomach. So I think that we could certainly find quite a few restaurants that we're going to love if it's going to bring us together.
Awesome. So those are all the questions that I have for you. But if you have any parting statement that you want to reach out to the community. Take it away.
Thanks so much. And again, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. As I've been campaigning on the ground in DC since November 2024, one of my biggest concerns have been, are we doing enough to reach our diverse populations so that you know that we all have opportunity this election season? As an independent candidate, I am not on the primary ballots, which means I won't be in the June elections, and you haven't seen me as much as many would like to see me on the forums, the candidate forums, but I'm out here nonetheless. My election is in November, the general election, the big election, and it's so important that we don't allow the national election to overtake the local elections, because so much of what you're concerned about in your communities, in your schooling, in your economics is going to depend on who we elect locally. So Dr. Rhonda Hamilton gets her signature ballots in June, the second week of June. We're going to be reaching out to the community to get those signatures so we get on the November ballot, and so that you guys can take part in what we like to believe is going to be making history by electing me in November. My website for more information about my policy positions and where I stand on things is www.rhonda, R-H-O-N-D-A, Hamilton, the number 4, DC.com. My phone number, yes, I am a candidate who picks up the phone. I carry 4 to make sure that happens. My number is 202-486-6037. And I would like to extend a very humble request that all of our citizens show up to vote, but most especially our diverse citizens. And if I can do anything about helping to ease your understanding about this election process so that you will show up, please do reach out and let us know. We don't want to leave anybody behind, and we need all of us to help defeat the threats facing DC and its citizens. And I thank you guys again.
Thank you so much. I like, this is time to say goodbye, but I have one question to ask you.
Okay.
Why independent? Like,
I love that. Thanks for not letting me get out here.
We are really bipolar. It was crazy time that we're in. Why are you independent? Like, why did you pick that?
I've been independent since 2012 because once I've watched the politics and the fact that we ended up being the pawns, whether the Democrats were in control or the Republicans, I do understand that there's a time where we have to come together and really defeat these agendas that mean us no good. But I just didn't feel that the Democrat Party had been earning my vote. I felt that they were assuming it. And, you know, in this life, we have very little that we can control and have control of when it comes to this political conversation. But for me, I didn't want them to assume my vote. I wanted them to earn it. And so I became independent because I realized that I was more in favor of public government being about the citizens. And it just started to feel very dangerous and toxic for me. As a mental health advocate, I'm often sought after. I have a background in sales, and so you tend to have a base around you, and it starts to feel very cliquish, and the people's needs weren't being met. And so I felt responsible as a leader to always start the conversation in an uncomfortable space so that we can grow. And so I get asked that question more often than not, and I hope that it's helped to enlighten folks about politics as a whole. Politics and religion are the two things that will incite a riot. And the truth of the matter is, I believe too many of us hide behind those designations and we don't learn who the person before us is. So for me, it was about having the respect of earning my vote and being able to have a conversation with me about my politics instead of assuming that because my skin was a certain color or because I was living in a certain geographical area that I wouldn't ask for accountability for things that matter so much to my everyday living. And I'm hoping that will catch on.
Thank you so much for coming down today with us to answer questions from the community and from the newsroom as well. I hope we'll see you again before the November election. We intend to have a forum between the candidates before the November election, and hopefully we'll see you again. Thank you so much. And ተመልካቾቻችን ስለተከታተላችሁ እናመሰግናለን። በቀጣይ ደግሞ እንግዲህ ሌላ እጩ ይዘንላችሁ እስከምንገናኝ ድረስ መልካም ቀን። Thank you.
Thank you.